Hello guys, it's Tomi from GoodTomiCha. Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a very long time, like years. But I'm so excited for 2025 and all the content I have planned so far for the year. Since the last time we spoke, I feel like I've become a very serious reader. Like when the pandemic started, I realized I didn't have any hobbies that I wasn't monetizing, which is funny because now I'm going to be talking about books, but I just love them so much I can't stop talking about them, so it's fine. So today I thought I'd share my top 10 favorites from 2024, along with a few honorable mentions. So let's dive into it, shall we? I am sorry that the lighting is so weird today, but we're just gonna have to work with it. We're gonna have to work with it and just embrace it. Also, I'm someone who reads a lot of romance. I don't read solely romance, but it is a majority of what I'm consuming. So if it's not for you, I don't know if this video will be helpful, but I just want to give that caveat before we jump in. If it's considered a favorite book of mine, I did rate it 5 stars. And 5 stars for me means that I loved it so much, have read it more than once, or will read it more than once, and will automatically recommend it to a friend time and time again. One of my favorites for the year has to be The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. I've actually been working on their backlog recently, and let me just say, it's a lot spicier than their usual contemporary romances. However, this one was kind of more in that foray, and I'm like, let's get back here, Christina. Let's not be shy. Let's not be shy, Miss Christina and Miss Lauren. Let's get into it. This was a marriage of convenience trope, kind of mixed with Succession and a little bit like Crazy Rich Asians. So Anna and Liam meet on campus where they end up getting married just to be able to afford some student housing because they only had like a marriage dorm left available. However, it's like 5 years later or something down the line and they realize they're still married to each other, and his sibling is having a wedding in like the remote island in the Pacific and needs to bring his wife because he's told his family all about her. But they pretend that they don't really like each other, but then they like each other. I loved the banter. It was so witty. I was laughing out loud multiple times reading this. And it's definitely my top 5 favorite books by them. And I will be recommending this for the foreseeable future for anyone who's looking for a good summer beach read. Next, we have Between Lovers and Friends by Shirlene Obuobi. And shout out to my West African sister. She did her big one with this. This is my first book by the author, and I loved everything about it. So Between Lovers and Friends is about a Black woman who is a doctor in her late 20s, I believe. And it's a kind of a love triangle, which, can I say, I usually hate love triangle tropes. So don't let this stop you, because it's not, it is, but like it isn't. It is, but like it isn't. It's fine. So Dr. Jo is a Black woman in her late 20s, and she's kind of caught between this love triangle of her childhood friend Ezra, who is kind of like an heir to a great fortune. His mom's super famous, dad's a great businessman, and another man named Malcolm, who is an author who's just kind of getting his feet wet into like the whole publishing world. And as it goes through, it kind of dialogues all of the characters and their own development and growth as they're going on in like these different stages of life, whether it's through mental health, burnout, depression, all of these things, relationships with like parents that aren't always the best. And it was just very poignant. Like everything about it, I was into it. I would highly recommend this for my women in STEM girlies for sure, but I think anyone can enjoy this. And again, if you don't like love triangles, don't let that stop you, because I'm also someone who finds them kind of like eye-rolling, but I thought this was very well done. And I can't wait to read more by this author. And next up, we have one of my 2 favorite romantices for the year, which is The Songbird and the Heartstone. The Songbird and the Heart of Stone. Sidebar, Carissa Broadbent is on this wave of doing these book titles that are very hard for me to remember, but whatever it is, I'm still eating it up. I don't know if it's considered a trilogy, a duology, or what. Basically, it's 3 sets of duologies. So this book kind of feels like a Greek mythology retelling. It also has like vampires. So the first 2 are like The Serpent and the Wings of Night, if you might have seen that in like the Ashes Curse one. Then this is the second set. It follows a character who was introduced in the first set of books. I don't think you need to read the first 2 to read this, because I read those a long time ago and I was struggling to remember a lot of her backstory, and I still really enjoyed this book. However, it would probably definitely help for you to read those 2 first, and they're great. The first one is really good. The second one, not as much. But this one, again, we're back in it. So this book follows Mish, who is a priestess for a sun god, which is kind of ironic because, as we know from like fantasy and supernatural lore, vampires and the sun do not mix, which is also the case within this series. And so every time she uses her magic and helping and like praising her god, she ends up burning herself constantly over and over. So it's in pain, even though it's part of her religion, so to speak. And even though we're not even at the romanticy part of this book, what I really loved as someone who is a Christian and religious, but I also see a very large movement of people who are like deconstructing their faith, stepping away from the church, and kind of questioning themselves and their relationship with God of like, if this hurts me, is this something that I want to do? Or really trying to understand like what their relationship looks like when it comes to religion as an adult. And I feel like that's the journey that she's going through. So I thought it was very deep. Usually for a romantasy, like the deepest you get is probably like she was scared and now she's not scared anymore. But it's also a little bit more about mistakes and learning from your past and how to redeem yourself as you get older and what it takes to kind of do that. And I would definitely consider the love interest kind of like a Shadow Daddy-esque type of vibe. So if that's your thing, then definitely try this out. Abby Jimenez, The Woman That You Are. Just for the Summer is probably my favorite book of the year, not just one of my top 10. I constantly think about this book. It's part of her Part of Your World series, which is an interconnected standalone situation where it's 3 books featuring all same characters but different, couples and relationships in each one. Please go ahead and read Part of Your World first and then yours truly and then this. It is part of that series. No, you do not have to because you'll still understand it, but there's a lot of things that are revealed in this book that will not hit the same if you aren't aware of all the other backstory things that are happening. So definitely do that first. But this is about Emma and Justin, who happened to me on Reddit of all places. And can I just say I loved it because I don't know where I've ever read that before in a romance book. In like the Am I the Asshole subreddit. A bunch of things occur, but they end up coming to the same place in Minnesota and spending time together just for the summer and developing this relationship that is beautiful. Emma is struggling with her own life and a very problematic mother who is neglectful and narcissistic. And Justin is also struggling with family things because the loss of one parent through death, but his other parent, his mom, is going to prison soon, and he's going to have to become the caretaker for all of his younger siblings. So while this is like a rom-com technically, there's some heavy stuff. There's some heavy stuff going on in here. I was crying at the end. And not from like, oh, beautiful payoff, but again, from some of the story things that are revealed just because of how heavy it all felt. But I loved this so much, and I have read this 3 times. I also got an arc for this book, read it early in 2024, and then have read it, continued reading it again and again and again, and I keep recommending it to people, and everyone I have has loved it too. I don't know what you like to take to your beach read. Some people like to talk about murderers, so that's not for me. This might be your cup of tea. I don't know. This is a judgment-free zone. I gotta go quick because this sun is moving on me, child. So next we have Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which people get on her for doing the same thing over and over, but do we get mad at James Patterson or Stephen King for doing horror time and time again? No. Well, maybe you do, but they're still selling lots of copies of books, so like we can't be too mad at that. Ali Hazelwood loves to focus on a very tiny woman and a very big man, and a woman in STEM, always. You know what? If it works, it works. And it works for me. This is a story about Misery. That's the female main character's name. You get over it very quickly. Who is a vampire and Lowen, who is a werewolf. And they are trying to save their respective communities because they're at war with each other. And the only way they can stop it is with the power of love. I know. It's beautiful. But basically, with their marriage of convenience, they have to kind of learn to work with each other, and then also figuring out the subplot of who is doing these who are doing these attacks on their respective communities, and then also a subplot of where Misery's best friend is, because she's been missing for like the entire book, and she's been trying to figure out how to find her. It was very cute. It was very, very cute. It was quick. It was a fast read. I was engaged the entire time, and it also made me realize how much I want more low-stakes cozy fantasy in my life that is romance, because any other books like an SJM or Rebecca Yarros, there's like a intense magic system, lots of lore and backstory that you need. This, you've got nothing. You've learned everything about their entire world in this quick 400-page book. So I love it. Let's get into this more, authors. I don't care if it has to be like a novella or what, but I like this format. My only thriller of the bunch is Such a Bad Influence by Olivia Muenter. Now, I don't know if this is because it's a little bit narcissistic of me because talking about influencers, and I'm like, I want to read that. But I thought it was very, very well done. This is a debut work by this author, and it was incredible that it was so... I just loved it. I loved it so much. Basically, think of the very famous like YouTubers who push their kids on the internet to like sing and dance for some extra coin. And then that little child one day becomes like one of the, of course, most famous kids in America because they have this huge platform and all these social media things, and then they disappear from the public eye and also from her friends and family. And so they're trying to figure out where she is, what happened to her, and how someone who is so online can just disappear without a trace. But all throughout that, you also have commentary on the influencer community, what it looks like to kind of put your kids in the spotlight when they don't really have a choice, and also how society treats murder mysteries and thrillers and like serial killers and stuff like that, and how we've come into like monetizing it with podcasts and documentaries and all of this, where we just kind of become desensitized to the violence of it all. I ate it up. I ate this up. Next, we have Baby X by Keira Peikoff, and I hope I'm saying her name right. I got this as an arc at the end of 2023. Came out in 2024, so I'm counting it. But it's more sci-fi. I loved this premise. Think of the IVF of today, but even more intense, where you're able to choose your child's physicality, the traits, physicality in terms of like strength, their athleticism, their intelligence, their personality, all of that, and that you only need like a single piece of someone's DNA to be able to make that child. So you don't have to go through the very intense like egg retrieval process and all of that to create this DNA. So it kind of has some issues where people will try and go and like run past a celebrity and like grab a piece of their hair and be able to create this baby with them where they have no control over it. And so there's like all these different stories kind of tied into one of showing how the society works and what it looks like when you kind of go down this rabbit hole of very ethically ambiguous decisions when it comes to creating life. I was kept on my toes the entire time. I guess it's considered more of like a sci-fi thriller, so maybe it is another thriller for me, but I loved it. I was very entertained, and I can't wait to read more from this author because I think this was also her debut novel. Next, we have This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. I received this as an ARC as well, and I loved this book. Kennedy Ryan is continuously one of my favorite authors of all time. I think she's someone who does romance so incredibly well. I talked about earlier about how hard it is for, I think, romance authors to find the balance of real world topics and also being immersed into this romance that makes you feel like love is real and super deep and passionate and all of these things. And she finds a way to tie it in all together so well. And another added bonus is that she does Black romances very, very well. I feel like as a subgenre, it's not something that is typically pushed to the forefront in traditional marketing. It's a lot more like indie things, and so I feel like as she continues to succeed, it also helps uplift other Black authors in the space. So I love to see it happening. But I think literally every book that I've ever read by her is probably 5 stars for me. Like, I don't think there's a single book where I've been like, it was okay. This book is no different, and it's also very dramatic, child. I was gasping like the entire time of some of the things happening at the beginning of this book. But basically it's about a woman named Soledad, and she is just getting divorced from her husband, who was in a very like scandalous situation where he's going to prison, I think, for embezzling money. And she starts to fall for like the forensic accountant, who's the person technically responsible for putting her husband into prison. But all along the side of that, it's also about her growing as a woman in her 40s and trying to figure out like what her life looks like now as a single mother, trying to provide for her kids because she's only been like a homemaker this entire time. So I love that it shows this type of story because I feel like it's not something that we see often. A lot of your romance novels are like younger, set on younger women, so it's nice to be able to see this other aspect of it and read about it in such a colorful way. Kennedy Ryan does some amazing chemistry, and this book is definitely no exception for sure. 5 stars. My final one, Savor It by Tarah Dewitt. I loved this. This, I think, was the first book that I'd ever read by her, and it was so cute. I loved the banter. I loved the small town romance vibes, which is very interesting because I'm usually not one for those in those books with like the quirky characters and the people who are meddling all the time. But I just thought it was like very well done. It was Hallmarky, but not too cheesy. And basically it's about a woman named Sage, and she owns like this small little hobby farm in this small town, and a chef named Fisher, who is kind of exiled to this city for a new restaurant that his boss is opening up, and he's supposed to do all like the research to make sure it gets off the ground and whatnot. And they end up kind of like falling for each other and trying to figuring out like what life looks like. Is it something that can be sustainable or not? He's this big city hotshot chef who has like Michelin stars and all of this, and she is from her quaint little town. And it's just kind of nice to see the development between the two throughout the story. I love the world that she's building in there, and I've also read the arc for the next book, which is called Love to Forever, featuring the next characters like in this connected series, and it is so good. That comes out this year in 2025. You're gonna eat it up. 5 stars, loved every character in there, and I can't wait to read more. So those were all my books that were published in 2024, but of course I'm gonna cheat. So instead of just 10, I can talk about a few more books that I really, really loved from the year. Butcher and Blackbird. Literally, what the heck, this entire book as I'm reading it, it's a serial killer romance. Excuse me? Like, usually someone says dark romance, and I immediately exit stage left because it's not for me. It's a little bit too just two, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not a haunting Adeline type of lady. If that's you, great. Happy for you. It's just not for me, babes. But Butcher and Blackbird, I was cackling this entire time. It's definitely more comedy, like a dark comedy versus like dark romance. But yeah, it's a serial killer romance. It's two serial killers. Think of like a Dexter situation where these people both go after like murderers and rapists and stuff like that, and they kind of set up a competition with each other and end up falling in love. It's very cute. I know it's weird to say that it's cute, but it's cute. It's cute. It is what it is. Also, do yourself a favor and listen to this as an audiobook. Not the physical, not the ebook, audiobook. They do dual narration, so they're like in the same room, and it feels more like banterish and conversational back and forth than just like someone reading a line in a studio. Incredible. And after listening to this audiobook, it made me look for other audiobooks that were like that. Now, The Will of the Many, this is a fantasy, honey. This is what I've been like yearning for a very long time. I feel like I'm constantly on the search for like a strong fantasy book one where it pulls me in like immediately, and that hasn't happened in a very long time, and this book did it. I don't know if it's because it did have like the Roman influence and stuff, because I do love a Roman Greek mythology situation, but highly recommend. It's a little dense, but the entire time I was reading it, I did not feel like, oh my god, when is this going to end? I wanted more and more and more. This is a little bit of like Hunger Games mixed with like the Roman mythology things, also sci-fi. It's basically about a young boy who is an orphan child of a prestigious family that was killed off, and he ends up escaping to this new society that they're rebuilding, adopted by a man that he should typically hate because they were responsible for the slaughter of his family. But he's adopted, and he has to go to this new academy where he learns to fight, learns all these like education things, and he's able to get along a little bit better than the average person because he did have an upbringing that, like, in a royal family, so he had tutors and all this stuff, but everyone else doesn't know that. So there's kind of this of trying to figure out like who he is, and also if he will survive this entire situation of being able to get to the end, discover all the secrets, and prevail essentially. But I cannot wait for book 2 of this. I know a lot of people are like waiting until book 2 comes out to be able to. The author is at least working on it. It's not a J.R.R. Martin situation. Like, there are words to paper, and I'm hoping it'll come out this year, and if not end of this year, I feel like it's going to be a spring 2026 at the latest. So highly recommend. Definitely put this on your list. It is worth the hype. The Shepherd King duology, One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, I absolutely loved. Again, it's another fantasy that's a little bit easier in terms of the magic system, and it's also unique. I've never read one like this. Their magic system is based like on a deck of cards, and each card has a different like type of power with it, and so everyone's trying to fight to be able to have these in their possession so that they can essentially be invincible, the most powerful, and the most rich, and all of this type of stuff. And there's one girl here in the story who is able to manipulate powers of the cards that she shouldn't be able to do, and so people are trying to figure out how that's possible. And then they're also suffering from like a blight covering their city. It's like a smoky fog that's killing off people, making them sick, and so they're trying to fight that and get to the bottom of that situation as well throughout these books. It is technically romantasy because there is romance in here. I don't think it's actually that strong in the first one, but the second book I actually loved more. Sometimes that's a debatable situation because some people love this one more, some people love this one, but it's definitely the second book that I enjoy. The characters are the same, but it dives into a second set of characters in this book a little bit heavier. So I'm an Elm girly, loved it. 5 stars, cannot recommend enough. And it's actually funny, my husband read these books first, and he was like, you would love these. So he loved these. I love them. They're for everyone. And then finally, Legendborn. I just got into this series. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everyone I ever doubted who said, oh, you will love this. And I was like, it's YA. It's YA, babes. Like, I don't have time for this. I'm an adult. I have books to read. I have smut to fulfill. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I did not recognize your game. I did not respect it. These books are so good, and they are YA, but like they don't feel YA. I typically hate YA because their conversations are very juvenile. Juvenile, for lack of a better word. They just kind of seem like they're fighting about nothing. And the situations don't seem like they have that much weight, but this one, very cool. The magic systems also Arthurian and legend, so like I've never seen that happen. So like King Arthur, Percival, the Knights of the Round Table, all of that jazz. And it's about Bree, who is a Black woman who is living in North Carolina, so shout out, loves the representation. And she's going to UNC, and she's learning about like the history of Black people on campus, but also like diving into the secret societies, which happen to be like connected to like the Arthurian legend stuff, and figuring out like how to infiltrate it, because she thinks it has something to do with the death of her mother. Very, very good stuff. Love it. There's kind of a love triangle in this too, which is also sometimes why I hate YA, but I loved it too. I loved it. I loved it. So maybe I do love triangles. Who could know? But I'm so excited. Book 3 comes out this year, and it is definitely on the top of my list of the things I'm most excited about for in 2025. Okay, don't forget to follow me on Instagram as well. I just started a broadcast channel for the first time this year, where I'm talking about romance books, and we do a buddy read with all the members in there, where we pick a book a month, and then at the end of the month, we have a little discussion about things we loved, and other, shenanigans. So I will link it all below for you. But I'm excited about that and kind of seeing where it goes. So stay tuned. If you made it to that video, thank you. I feel like you could see me shifting. You could see me shifting with the sun, but I just didn't want to use some artificial light today. I wanted to like really be in there, and I just did not time it well enough. So I was like, whatever, we're gonna keep doing this. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hear me yap about books. I will keep yapping about books because I love it so much. These are my favorites from the year, but come back later. I will share about my goals for 2025 in terms of reading and some of the books I'm most looking forward to this year. If you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts in the comments if you loved them, or if you like any of these books, let me know if you want recommendations for books similar to these, and I'd be happy to give them. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!